Hey everyone, how are you all doing? I hope you're all very healthy today and feeling calm. As always, we're going to jump into a heartbreaking story that is sure to stir your feelings, test your patience, and maybe even make you angry. This is the story of a wife who made a huge sacrifice only to be paid back with the worst kind of betrayal. Imagine this. For 5 long years, this wife worked without stopping to pay for her husband's whole medical school education until he finished. But what did she get on graduation day? Instead of a thank you, she got divorce papers. Her husband told her in a proud way, "We are not on the same level anymore. I am embarrassed to have such a normal wife." After the divorce, the wife disappeared completely. However, 1 year later, her ex-husband, now a doctor, panicked and looked for her with great need. What had happened to him? Well, before we go deep into this story, I always ask you to keep supporting the Griot Stories channel. If you haven't yet, make sure you press the like button. And so you don't miss any of our most exciting and newest stories, subscribe and turn on the notification bell while you wait. How about a quick roll call? I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please write your name, your city, and the word present in the comments below. Thank you all so much. Alright, with no more delay, let's jump right into the story. That morning, loud applause echoed through the big room of the Morehouse School of Medicine. Among the happy families, Amara Nima sat with very strong feelings. She softly wiped the corners of her wet eyes to stop the tears from falling. She looked toward the stage. There, her husband, Kian Sterling, stood tall, wearing his cap and gown, holding the medical degree he had just gotten from the dean. 5 years. 5 years of waiting, sacrifice, and hard times you can't imagine had finally worked out. Amara smiled. It was a real smile, one that felt a little stiff from the years of being very tired. She looked down at her own slightly rough hands that hadn't known the treat of a manicure in the last 5 years. These hands had been busy working dough to bake pastries for local coffee shops before the sun came up and typing up reports late at night at the office. They were the same hands that rubbed Kian's back when he said he was tired after long nights studying. Amara had taken on 2 jobs. She had sold her great-grandma's jewelry she inherited and pushed down all her own wishes, all for one single dream to see Kian in a white coat. Beside her, Kian's mother, her mother-in-law, Zola Sterling, wore the proudest look. "My Kian is finally a great doctor," Mrs. Sterling said loudly to a guest sitting next to her, enjoying the congratulations. Mrs. Sterling looked fancy in a designer suit and a perfectly styled hairdo. She looked sideways at Amara, who wore a plain dress. For a long time, Mrs. Sterling hadn't hidden her dislike for Amara, who came from a simple family, and in her opinion, wasn't good enough for her brilliant Kian. But Amara didn't care. Kian's love was enough for her. The graduation ceremony ended. Kian walked to them with a big smile, but that smile was aimed mostly at Mrs. Sterling. He hugged his mother tightly. "I did it, Mom," he said. "Of course, son. Mama always knew you were special," Mrs. Sterling replied, tapping his back. Amara stepped closer to hug her husband. "Congratulations, darling." Kian accepted Amara's hug with some stiffness. He quickly let go of her. "Yeah, thanks. We're having dinner tonight at that new fancy spot that just opened. I made a reservation." "Let's celebrate," Kian said, but his eyes didn't meet Amara's. Amara's heart felt a little hurt by the coldness, but she tried to understand. Maybe Kian was tired or just full of emotion. "Sure, sweetheart, whatever you want," Amara replied softly. That night, the 3 sat in a fancy restaurant looking out at the shiny Atlanta night city view. Amara felt a bit out of place. It was the most expensive place she had ever been to. She saw Kian, who had changed into an expensive-looking designer shirt, sitting with great confidence. Mrs. Sterling couldn't stop taking pictures of Kian to post on her social media. "Honey, all our hard work is finally over. Now we can start a new life," Amara said, trying to start a warm talk. Hearing that, Mrs. Sterling laughed in a mean way. "Kian's hard work, you mean Amara? My son is a hard worker. He's a doctor now. Course his life will be new. He deserves the best." Amara got quiet at the mean comment. She waited for her husband to stand up for her, to say it had been a team effort, But Kian said nothing, busy looking at the menu. After ordering the food, there was a short silence. Kian cleared his throat and looked at Amara. This time his look was hard to read. Cold, blank, with something strange about it. Amara, I have to tell you something, Kian said. Yes, sweetheart. Amara replied, looking at him with hope. Kian reached into his new leather bag and pulled out a thick brown envelope, placing it on the table right in front of Amara. Amara frowned. What is this, honey? A job offer from the hospital. Mrs. Sterling, sitting next to Kian, smiled in a smug way. That smile gave Amara a sudden bad feeling. Kian slightly shook his head. No, open it. Amara's hands shook a little as she took the envelope. She slowly opened it. Her eyes read the first lines of an official paper. Her heart seemed to stop. The fancy restaurant seemed to stop turning. The sound of forks and knives from other tables seemed to disappear. There, clearly written, was petition for divorce. Amara looked up and stared at Kian in confusion. Her lips shook. Kian, this is a joke, right? What kind of joke is this? Today is your graduation. Kian sighed deeply. His face became hard. It was as if the mask of happiness he had worn all day had fallen off. I'm serious, Amara. We can't be together anymore. But why? What did I do wrong, honey? For 5 years, Amara's voice broke. Exactly because of that, Kian cut in sharply. 5 years have been enough. I'm a doctor now. I have a bright future. I need a partner who is on my level. Someone I can take to important parties. Someone who fits my place in society. Kian looked Amara up and down, judging her plain dress, her tired, makeup-free face. Amara, we are no longer on the same level. Kian said that sentence so easily, as if Amara's 5 years of sacrifice meant nothing. I am embarrassed to have such a normal wife. It was like lightning on a clear day. Amara's head spun. Those hurtful words were spoken by the man for whom she had been the money earner, the nurse, and the supporter of his dreams. Mrs. Sterling added in a winning voice. Did you hear that, Amara? Kian has other standards now. You should have known your place from the start. It's better you two split now before you become a weight and embarrass him among the doctor crowd. Think of the money you earned as a charity gift. The tears Amara had been holding back finally burst out. Not a single drop, but a flood she couldn't control. The pain, the shame, and the betrayal broke her heart. She looked at Kian, searching for some small bit of the man who once loved her, but all she found was a proud stranger. She looked at Mrs. Sterling, who was smiling with satisfaction. Amara bit her lip hard to stop a cry that wanted to come out. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her fall apart in public. With strongly shaking hands, she crumpled the divorce paper. The word charity that Mrs. Sterling had spit out was like pouring gas on the burning coals of Amara's heart. Something inside her broke, but it didn't shatter. The moment it broke, it changed into cold, sharp steel. The tears instantly stopped. She slowly lifted her head and looked at the two people in front of her. Her look, once confused and full of pain, was now cold, blank, and hard to read. She roughly wiped the last tears from her cheeks. It was no longer the soft move of a desperate person, but the strong movement of someone who had made a choice. Kian and Mrs. Sterling were a little surprised by the sudden change. They expected Amara to cry, beg, or faint. But instead, Amara kept a scary silence. Enough. That single word came from Amara's lips. Her voice was rough from holding back tears, but it was very loud and strong. Mrs. Sterling, I said enough, Amara repeated, now looking straight into her mother-in-law's eyes, who was starting to look confused. You told me to know my place. You said my sacrifices were just charity. You said I was a weight. Amara let out a small, mean laugh, a laugh more chilling than a crazy cry. That laugh made Kian uncomfortable. Did you think I would stand by while you stepped on and shamed me like this? Amara turned to Kian, who now looked a little tense and confused. And you, Mr. Kian, the way she stressed the Mr. sounded like making fun. You say you've become a doctor. You say that degree is yours. You are very wrong. Amara slowly rose from her chair. Her moves were calm but full of held-back anger. Her hand, the same one that had just crumpled the divorce papers, now pointed right at Kian's face, which was starting to lose color. "That degree is mine too." Amara's voice suddenly went higher. It shocked Kian and Mrs. Sterling, and even made people at the next table turn and look. Amara didn't care. "Every dollar that led you to that graduation is my sweat," Amara shouted. Her voice shook with held-back feeling. "Every thick textbook you bought was food I took from my own mouth. Every night you slept comfortably before a test, I was awake until dawn getting bakery orders ready." She poked Kian's chest with her index finger. "You only borrowed my body, my energy, and my whole life for the last 5 years to buy that degree." Her chest rose and fell, her breathing ragged as she held the anger that filled her very soul. "You said I'm not on your level." Amara laughed again, this time louder. "You're right. I'm really not on your level." She moved her sharp look between Kian and Mrs. Sterling. "I will never be on the level of a coward who betrays his wife on his graduation day. And I will never be on the level of a mother who proudly supports her son's betrayal just for a place in society." Amara picked up her plain shoulder bag that was on the chair. "And remember this, both of you." Amara stressed every word. "You will regret this." Hurt in his pride as a new doctor and angry at being called out in public, Kian stood up. His face was red with shame and anger. "Amara, sit down. Don't make a scene. What else do you want? Split of things we own. We have nothing. Have you forgotten that all your money went into my school fees?" Kian yelled, trying to scare Amara into returning to her quiet ways. But Amara instead smiled. A smile so cold it sent a chill down Kian's spine. "Did you think I was that stupid, sweetheart?" Amara pulled out her mobile phone. She no longer cared about the stares of the people around them. "Did you think I hadn't noticed your awful behavior for the last 6 months? You started hiding your phone every time I walked by. You started coming home late with the excuse of group projects, even though your clothes smelled like another woman's perfume. A week ago, I gave up buying new clothes for myself to cover your last school payment. And suddenly, you had money for a brand new designer watch." Kian gasped. He had no idea Amara had noticed all that. Amara dialed a speed dial number on her phone. "Attorney Washington. Hello. I'm sorry to bother you so late." Kian frowned. "Attorney Washington? Who is Attorney Washington?" he asked with suspicion. Mrs. Sterling, who had been proud moments before, now looked worried. Her face got tight. Amara completely ignored Kian as if the man wasn't even there. "Yes, it's Amara. Our suspicions were right." For a moment, Amara listened to the voice on the other end of the line. "Yes, counselor. I got the paper tonight just as I expected. Exactly the scene you guessed." Kian's heart pounded. "Suspicions. Guessed. Please go ahead." Amara continued, her voice strangely calm. "Right away process all the papers I left at your office last week." "Yes, counselor, everything including the counterclaim for betrayal and money trick, and most importantly, include the full list of the damage claim for the costs of education and life support for 5 years. Please send the summons to the address of the hospital where he is starting his training next week as soon as possible." Hearing the word damages, Mrs. Sterling jumped out of her chair. Her face was pale. "Counterclaim? What damages, Amara? Don't make things up. Are you crazy? You're trying to force money from my son," she cried in a panic. Amara finally hung up the phone, slowly putting her mobile back into her bag. She looked at Mrs. Sterling. "I'm not crazy, ma'am. I'm just asking for my rights. You just said this was an investment. Well, I want my investment back. All of it. I have saved every transfer receipt, every school receipt, and even every utility bill I paid for the last 5 years." Amara turned to Kian, who was now frozen. His lips were tight. "Did you think I would let you walk away freely to find a new life and a new wife on your level with the degree I bought with my blood and tears? You were dead wrong, sweetheart." Amara picked up the divorce paper that was on the table in front of Kian and Mrs. Sterling. She didn't tear it up. Instead, she folded it carefully and put it in her bag. "This will be great extra proof in court." "Thank you. I will not sign your divorce papers," Amara said firmly. "But I will divorce you and I will make you pay for every drop of my sweat before you can proudly wear that white coat." Without another word, Amara turned, walked out of that fancy restaurant with a steady step, leaving Kian and Mrs. Sterling frozen at the table in front of the expensive food they had ordered and hadn't even touched. That night, Amara didn't cry anymore. The burning anger had dried all her tears, leaving only steel strength. Amara's steps as she left the fancy restaurant were light, but her footprints seemed to burn on the cold marble floor. She didn't cry. A thick anger had frozen her tears. She walked quickly toward the lobby, ignoring the stares of the restaurant staff, who watched her strangely, her, who had entered as part of a group of 3 and now left alone with a red face. She right away waved down a passing taxi and gave the address of Nia Adebio's, her only friend's studio in the city. During the ride, Amara sat still. The city lights, which should have seen her happy celebration, now seemed like a painful joke. Kian's proud face and Mrs. Sterling's sneaky smile kept appearing before her eyes. "We are no longer on the same level." That sentence kept repeating in her ears like a rusty nail. She held the phone in her hand. Attorney Washington's contact was saved there. She wouldn't let this shame be the end of everything. It would be the start. Nia opened the door to her simple studio with a sleepy look, but her eyes widened in surprise when she saw Amara at her door. "Amara, what are you doing here at this hour? Shouldn't you be celebrating Kian's graduation?" Amara didn't answer. She walked in and as soon as the door closed, her legs gave way. She leaned against the wall. "He asked me for a divorce, Nia," Amara said in a quiet, rough voice. "What?" Nia jumped up in surprise. "You're kidding. No way." "In the restaurant the very night of his graduation," Amara repeated, and her voice started to shake again. Nia right away hugged her friend. In Nia's arms, Amara's armor fell apart. But it wasn't a cry of hopelessness. It was a cry of boiling anger. She told her everything. Mrs. Sterling's insults, Kian's pride, and the divorce request. "That miserable parasite," Nia cursed, tightening her fists. "And that mother-in-law, is she a person or a devil? I told you from the start, Amara, they just used you." "I know." Amara pulled away from the hug and dried her tears. "I've already called a lawyer." "Attorney Washington." Nia was stunned. "A lawyer? Since when?" "For 6 months. Amara paused. "Since I realized Kian was starting to change. Since I found proof he was moving money to another account behind my back. I just needed the final proof. And tonight he gave it to me." A few weeks later, the feeling in the talk room at family court was very cold and tense. Amara, dressed in a plain but neat dress, sat up straight. Her face was calm and blank. Beside her, Attorney Washington, a middle-aged man with a calm but sharp look, organized a thick file on the table. Across from them, Kian and Mrs. Sterling sat nervously. Kian, who was about to start his training at a fancy hospital, looked tired. Mrs. Sterling kept whispering in his ear with a pale face. Attorney Washington's summons, which listed the counterclaim and the damage claim for $500,000, had completely ruined their celebration mood. The person in charge began the meeting, but before Kian or his newly hired lawyer could speak, Attorney Washington stepped in directly. "Thank you for your time. My client, Miss Amara Nima, is here today to answer Mr. Kian Sterling's divorce request. However, we reject that request." Kian looked up. "What do you mean you reject it?" "Amara. We reject it." Attorney Washington cut in firmly. "Because it will be my client who files the divorce request, and we have already filed it." Attorney Washington handed a stack of papers to the person in charge. "A divorce request based on betrayal, money trick, and mind hurt." "That's a lie," Mrs. Sterling shrieked. "Don't make things up." Attorney Washington ignored her. "And we are also adding a claim for damages for all the school and living costs my client covered for 5 years to pay for Mr. Sterling's medical studies." Attorney Washington opened the thick file in front of him. Put here is all the detailed proof from the twice-a-year school transfers, the receipts for book and lab stuff buys, the rent payment papers for their apartment, down to a list of the daily food costs my client sent to Mr. Sterling's account. The total is $500,000. Kian gasped and his face right away turned pale. $500,000 was a huge sum. His starting pay as a trainee wouldn't even reach a tenth of that amount in a year. Mrs. Sterling was breathless. The lawyer they had hired could only swallow hard upon seeing the perfect stack of proof. This is forcing money," Kian said in a voice that was a mix of anger and fear. That was a wife's duty. Amara, are you crazy?" Amara, who had stayed silent all this time, finally spoke. She looked right at Kian. "The duty of a wife you said wasn't on your level. The duty of a wife you were embarrassed of. The duty of a wife you left on your graduation day." Amara asked. Her voice was flat but sharp. "I'm not crazy, Kian. I'm just collecting what is mine." Choking silence fell. Kian and Mrs. Sterling knew they couldn't give any defense against that stack of proof. It was then that Amara gave Attorney Washington a small sign. Attorney Washington nodded. The next words from Attorney Washington put Kian and Mrs. Sterling back on edge. "My client is a person of great heart. She does not wish to drag this matter longer." Amara looked at Kian. "I will take back the damage claim of $500,000. Kian and Mrs. Sterling opened their mouths, unable to believe what they were hearing. "With some conditions," Amara quickly added. "First, you will accept my divorce request. The reason must be clearly written. Betrayal and leaving. I want my honor back. Second, there will be no claim for things we own. I will not take anything from that house, and you cannot ask for anything from me ever. We are at peace. Third, you both will sign an agreement that you will never again bother me or my family. Fourth, all of this closes today with no appeals or delays." Kian looked at Mrs. Sterling. Mrs. Sterling, half scared at the idea of having to sell her house to pay a debt of $500,000, right away nodded in panic. Agreed. "Sign quickly, Kian," she whispered. Pride was nothing compared to such a huge debt. Kian, his hands shaking from a mix of shame and relief, signed the agreement. The divorce process was very fast. The judge's hammer fell. Amara was officially free. She left the courthouse without looking back, leaving Kian sitting without power, and Mrs. Sterling crying tears of relief. That afternoon, Amara finished packing her last things into an old suitcase in Nia's studio. She had sold the rest of her jewelry and had gathered enough money to start a new life. "Amara, that $500,000 was yours. You could have bought a new apartment with that money," Nia said, still unable to understand. Amara closed the suitcase. "I don't want it, Nia. If I take that money, I'll always be tied to the bad feeling. It's dirty money. Money full of shame. I think that I paid $500,000 for a very expensive life lesson, and I don't want to do it again." "So, where will you go?" Amara smiled. It was the first truly real smile in weeks. "I want to continue with my dream, the one I put on hold. I want to go back to college. I want to write. I still have a brain, Nia. I still have a strong want." Amara took Nia by the shoulders. "I promise you, I will leave this city. I will disappear from Kian and his mother's life. I will use all my unseen worth, all this pain to build something truly great. Someday they will hear my name again, and then they will realize who really wasn't on whose level." Amara hugged Nia tightly. "Take care, Nia, and don't tell anyone where I am." "Of course, Amara. Chase your dreams. Make them regret it." That night Amara went to the bus station. She on purpose chose a faraway small town, a place where no one knew her. As the bus began to pull away from the shiny city that had caused her so much pain, Amara looked out the window. She didn't cry. She only felt huge relief. She vanished with one suitcase, a pile of uncollected sacrifices, and a great promise to herself. 1 year had passed. Time flowed without stopping, changing lives and turning the wheel of life. On the 15th floor of the most fancy private hospital in Atlanta, a young man walked with a firm and confident step. His white doctor's coat was perfectly ironed. An expensive stethoscope hung from his neck, not just as a tool, but as a sign of status. The name badge on his chest clearly read, Dr. Kian Sterling. He was the new surgery star. Smart, quick, and even though he was young, already trusted with several complex operations. His bosses loved him. The young nurses admired him, and his co-workers saw him as an example. Kian had gotten everything he wanted. His old life with Amara felt like a faraway bad dream. He barely remembered his ex-wife's name. If it ever crossed his mind, Kian only thought of it as a shameful memory, a step he had to step on to get where he was now. Divorcing Amara was the best choice of my life. He often told himself in front of the mirror in his fancy penthouse. Amara was a weight, a stone in his shoe, a reminder of his normal past. Now he was free, and he celebrated that freedom with fancy things. Kian no longer lived in the small rental apartment he had from his father. He and Mrs. Sterling had moved into a very fancy penthouse in the city center where they could enjoy the night city views. Of course, the loan payment was choking him, but Kian didn't care. Status was everything. He also traded his old motorcycle for a brand new black Mercedes-Benz C-Class. He bought the car with 7-year payments at very high cost. His starting pay at the private hospital was high, but not enough for the lifestyle he wanted to show. Every weekend, Kian spent his nights in fancy restaurants, the kind he had used to shame Amara. He bought designer watches, clothes, and joined an exclusive golf club. On the outside, Dr. Kian Sterling was the perfect picture of success. But behind that front, a pile of credit card bills began to grow. He juggled 5 different credit cards and had asked for several bank loans with the excuse of fixing up the penthouse. Kian's pride had perfectly rubbed off on Mrs. Sterling. Her status as a doctor's mother had raised her place in society to a level she had never imagined. Mrs. Sterling was now a full member of a social circle of bosses and high officials' wives. Whenever they met, she spoke of nothing but Kian's greatness. "Oh, Kian, of course, darling. He keeps having important surgeries. He didn't get home until 3 o'clock in the morning last night," she said one afternoon while stirring expensive tea in a fancy hotel lobby. In truth, she knew perfectly well that Kian had arrived at 3 o'clock in the morning, not because of surgery, but because he had gone to a party at an exclusive nightclub. Poor me. But what can you do? It's the call of a noble job. That boy is so dedicated. The new penthouse, you say, darling? Mrs. Sterling continued as if answering a question. Oh, well, it's simple. 3 bedrooms with a city view. Kian insisted his mother move in. He said she had to be comfortable in her old age. He's such a good son. Mrs. Sterling constantly pushed Khan to find a new partner quickly. Kian, you're a top doctor now. Don't make the wrong choice with your wife again. Look for someone on your level. Professor Evans' daughter is beautiful and finished from an Ivy League school. Or how about Sarah, the daughter of the hospital director next door? Remember, marriage is now a social investment for your career. She talked to Khan almost every day. Khan simply nodded, enjoying his new status as the most wanted single man. The days passed in a cycle of showing off and debt. Then one afternoon, while Khan led an evaluation meeting with younger doctors, something happened. He was speaking with authority, pointing at the presentation screen when he suddenly felt dizzy. His vision got blurry for a second, and he had to grab the edge of the table to keep from stumbling. "Dr. Sterling, are you all right?" asked a junior doctor when he saw his boss's face suddenly turn pale. Kian instantly stood up straight. He cleared his throat. "I'm fine. Just a little tired. Too many surgeries," he replied in a short way. "Let's continue." He ignored the strange throbbing he felt in his temples. It must be a common headache, he thought to himself. Lack of sleep and too much coffee. But that common headache started appearing more often. A few days later, while having lunch in the hospital cafeteria, still with his proud attitude, criticizing the chef's food as not good enough. His hand, which was holding the spoon, suddenly shook slightly. The shake only lasted a few seconds, but it was enough to make his heart skip a beat. "What is this?" he thought to himself. He tightened his fist under the table, trying to control the shaking. He blamed the air conditioning being too cold. That night, in his fancy penthouse, the sign showed itself more strongly. He had just taken a hot shower and was getting ready to go out to a dinner Mrs. Sterling had planned to introduce him to a woman. He was standing in front of a large mirror, fixing an expensive tie. Suddenly, the world around him seemed to tilt. His head throbbed strongly, as if thousands of needles were sticking it. His vision completely blurred, and a loud ringing echoed in his ears. He staggered backward, hitting the dresser behind him. Expensive perfume bottles fell to the floor. What's happening?" Kian whispered, holding his head, which felt like it was about to explode. He fell onto the floor. He couldn't breathe. A cold sweat soaked his face and shirt. As a doctor, danger alarm sounded in his head. This was not common tiredness or a headache, but his huge ego refused to admit it. He couldn't be sick. The great Dr. Kian, at the top of his career, couldn't be sick. He crawled to the medicine cabinet and pulled out 2 high-strength pain pills. He swallowed them without water. 15 minutes later, the pain slowly went down. He still felt a leftover throbbing, but he looked at the broken mirror on the floor. His face was pale. The phone rang. It was Mrs. Sterling. "Kian, where are you? Sarah and her family are waiting. Don't embarrass your mother." Kian took a deep breath, trying to gather his leftover strength. "Yes, Mom. I'm coming. There's traffic." He lied. He stood up. His body was still shaking slightly. He washed his face and fixed his hair again. He looked at the pile of credit card bills and car loan receipts on his desk. Suddenly, all that fancy stuff seemed cold and creepy. Fear began to enter his mind, but he pushed it away. "No, I'm fine," he muttered. "I just need to rest. Then everything will return to normal." He grabbed his Mercedes keys and left with the mask of success and pride back in place. The mask of pride that Kian had worn for a whole year finally cracked and broke. A few days after having the severe dizziness in his penthouse, the sign came back in the worst place imaginable at the operating table. He was leading a simple appendix removal, a job he could do with his eyes closed. He had washed up, put on clean gloves, and was about to ask the nurse for the knife. Suddenly his hand shook. At first it was a small shake, but within seconds it turned into a severe shake. The knife he had just gotten almost slipped from his hands. "Doctor," his helper said carefully behind his mask. His eyes showed confusion. Time seemed to stand still in that cold operating room. Khan looked at his own hand, stunned. He couldn't stop it. Cold sweat, drops the size of corn kernels, began to wet his temples. He tried to find an excuse. "The size of this glove is wrong. Change it," he whispered. But when he tried to take off the glove, the shake became even more clear. The helper and nurses exchanged looks. Kian, the star surgeon known for his steady hands, was now shaking like a person freezing cold. "Dr. Sterling, are you sure you're okay?" the helper asked again. Now there was worry in his voice. "I said I'm fine," Kian snapped, but he knew he couldn't continue. "Take over," he ordered his helper in a tight voice. "I suddenly feel sick, heartburn." He threw the knife onto the tool tray and quickly left the operating room, leaving a big question mark on his whole team. He ripped off his mask and surgery cap in the hallway and leaned against the wall. He was breathless. This was no longer tiredness. It wasn't a headache. It was something that was going to destroy his career, his pride, his future. Everything depended on the firmness of that hand. And that hand had just betrayed him. He set up a secret meeting outside work hours. He made an appointment for 9 o'clock at night, long after talk hours. He swallowed all his pride and went to the office of the chief of brain and nerve medicine, Dr. Avery. Dr. Avery, a calm, brilliant, and dedicated older doctor. The type of Dr. Kian thought old-fashioned and not stylish. In a twist, Kian's fate was now in Dr. Avery's hands. "Con, what's wrong?" Dr. Avery asked calmly, looking at Kian, who entered the room like a thief. Dr. Sterling had left his coat in the car. He had come as a normal patient. "I'm having strange signs. My hands shake and my vision often gets blurry." Dr. Avery listened carefully. His face stayed calm. He did a series of basic brain and nerve tests on Kian. "Lie down there. Follow this light. Close your eyes. Relax." Every command was like a slap to Kian. The great doctor was now an obedient patient. After the body check, Dr. Avery looked at him seriously. "We need to do an MRI of your brain and spinal cord first thing in the morning." Right away the next day, Khan went through a series of tests with a mix of fear and denial. He waited for the results in his office, walking back and forth like a caged lion. Mrs. Sterling called him several times complaining about why Khan wasn't taking her to dinner at the fancy hotel. "What good is your mother's life like this if I have a successful doctor son Kian?" "I'm busy, Mom." Kian shouted and hung up. His phone rang again. This time it was Dr. Avery. The results were ready. "Khan, can you come to my office now?" Kian's heart sank. With heavy steps, he went to Dr. Avery's office. The older doctor was already waiting for him. The results of Kian's MRI were shown on the large computer screen behind his desk. Dr. Avery did not use soft words. "Kian, sit down." Dr. Avery looked at the screen. "Look at this." He pointed to several not normal white spots on Kian's spinal cord and eye nerve. "This is not a lump or a stroke." "Then what is it?" Kian whispered, his voice shaking. "It's a rare, very strong disease where the body attacks itself. The body's defense system is attacking your own nerves." Kian's face lost all color. "That's not possible. I'm a surgeon. My hands." "That's why the signs are in your hands and vision," Dr. Avery said softly. "The disease is attacking the coating of your nerves. If we don't stop it, it will get worse. You could lose your sight, then your ability to move." Kian felt the room spin. "Is there a cure? An operation?" Dr. Avery sighed. "There is no cure. But there is a treatment to slow it down a lot. However, it's a very strong medicine with many side effects, and it only slows it. It won't fix the damage already done." "And the cost?" Kian asked, his voice now full of fear. "The medicine alone for the first year is around $250,000. And that's just the start. You'll need regular checks, more MRIs." Kian's mind went to his huge pile of debt. $250,000 just for medicine. He didn't even have $2,500 to pay his smallest credit card. "My insurance," he whispered, hoping for a way out. Dr. Avery opened another folder. "Your work insurance. We only cover listed serious sicknesses. Yours falls into the rare group, and the treatment for this disease is still thought of as testing by many insurance companies. Most they will pay will be for the finding and first treatment costs here. Maybe about $150,000, no more." Kian shook his head. "Not possible. Can't be. $250,000. He laughed. A dry laugh that sounded like a cry. Dr. Kian, the surgery star who had insulted his wife for not being on his level, was now here, completely broke and with a finding of a rare disease that threatened to leave him blind and unable to move. Kian stumbled out of Dr. Avery's office. He arrived at his penthouse. Mrs. Sterling was watching television in the fancy living room. "Kian, you're finally here. Mom ordered an expensive dinner on your credit card. Let's eat." Kian looked at his mother with empty eyes. "I'm sick, Mom," he whispered. "With what? Cold?" "I told you. It's not a cold," Kian shouted. His voice cracked. "I'm seriously ill. I need surgery abroad. It costs $1.8 million. The spoon Mrs. Sterling was holding fell onto her expensive plate. $1.8 million. That's a joke, Con. Where are we going to get the money?" We just paid the first payment on your new car. It's not a joke, Mom. Kian yelled. Panic finally completely took hold of him. I could go blind. I could be unable to move. My career is over and we don't have any money. We have nothing. We're ruined. Mom, ruined. That night in the fancy penthouse with decades of loan payment ahead, the proud Dr. Kian finally cried like a child, not for his sickness, but for the realization that he didn't have a single dollar to save his life and his pride. The panic was a silent room. Kian and Mrs. Sterling were now trapped in it. Kian's cry, "We're ruined," echoed in their fancy penthouse, bounced off the imported marble walls and expensive furniture yet to be paid for, and then hit them again with a loud silence. Mrs. Sterling, with a pale face, was the first to break that silence. But it was not with a cry of care for her son. "No, it can't be," Mrs. Sterling whispered, her voice shaking. She didn't look at Con, who was sitting without power on the floor. She looked around at the expensive abstract painting on the wall, the crystal light, the 80-inch flat-screen television. "We can't be ruined, Ken. This penthouse, your car, Mom's handbags, all this." Kian laughed, a dry laugh that sounded like the sound of a dying man. "That's the problem, Mom. All this is a lie." He stood up and kicked the glass coffee table in front of him, which slid screeching to the side. "This penthouse is a 20-year loan, Mom. We've barely paid 10 payments. Its worth right now is much less than the money we owe the bank. If we sell it, we'll still owe hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the Mercedes you boasted about in your social circle, Mom." Mrs. Sterling still tried to deny it. "That car." Kian rubbed his face roughly. "It's a 7-year loan, Mom. 7 years. The cost is choking us. If we sell it now, we won't have enough to pay the leftover debt. We have nothing. Only debt. Debt everywhere." Mrs. Sterling gasped. She thought of the designer handbags she had collected in her closet. Her heart sank. Almost half were high-quality fakes she had bought to keep looking good in her social circle without having to keep using Kian's credit cards. They were truly living a lie. "So what do we do? 1.8 million. Mrs. Sterling finally fell without power onto the expensive sofa. "My friends, those in the social circle, Mrs. Jenkins, the bank director's wife, Mrs. Washington, the building big shot's wife, surely they can help. They won't let their friends suffer." That empty hope burned for a moment. Mrs. Sterling picked up her phone with shaking hands. She called Mrs. Jenkins. A cheerful voice answered. "Hello, Zola. What's up at this hour? Darling, please help me. Help me." Mrs. Sterling right away burst into crazy tears. "It's Ken. Kian is very sick, darling. He needs a $1.8 million surgery. Please, darling, lend me some money." There was a short silence on the other end of the line, and that cheerful voice right away disappeared. 1.8 million. "Oh my goodness, Zola. That's too much. Oh, I'm sorry, Zola. My husband is in an important meeting abroad and I can't bother him, and I'm very busy preparing for a charity event. I'll call you later, Zola." Blick. She hung up. Mrs. Sterling was stunned. She tried calling again. Busy signal. She called Mrs. Washington. The call was rejected. She called again. Rejected again. She called Mrs. Thompson. The answer was the same. "Oh, Zola, we also need money for a fix-up right now. It's a bad time." All the friends in the social circle who had praised her were now avoiding her like a disease. Mrs. Sterling threw her phone onto the sofa. "They're all liars. They're mean." Kian looked at his mother with disgust. "Now you realize they are only your friends when you have something to show off, just like my friends." Now it was Kian's turn. He couldn't depend on his mother. He had to act on his own. But his pride as a great doctor stopped him from begging. He tried calling some doctor co-workers he thought were close. "Hello, Marcus. Sorry to bother you so late." Kian called his surgeon co-worker, Marcus Vidal. "Oh, Dr. Sterling, what's up? What's going on?" Kian swallowed. "Look, Marcus, a really good building investment chance has come up for me abroad. I urgently need money between $500,000 and $1 million. Do you have anything?" A laugh was heard on the other end of the line. Wow, Dr. Sterling is playing in the big leagues of investment now. I give up, doctor. With your new Mercedes and new penthouse, you're much better at making money. Hurry, doctor. I just paid the first payment on my son's house, so I'm broke. Good luck with the investment. Blick. He hung up. Ken let out a choke sound. Everyone thought he was rich. What a twist. The pride he had built for a year had become a thing that now stopped him from getting help. He tried calling 2 other doctors. The reply was similar. Sorry, doctor. I don't have any money right now. In great need, Kian swallowed the last bits of his pride. He made an appointment with the hospital director. He had to tell his sickness. Maybe the hospital could give an emergency loan to its best worker. In the director's cold office, Ken explained his situation without drama, only with medical facts. The director listened with deep care. Dr. Sterling, I'm very sorry. This is very shocking news. Of course, we will help you get the most out of your insurance. But, director, the insurance only covers $150,000. I need $1.8 million, Kian begged. His proud attitude had completely disappeared. Couldn't the hospital give me a loan? I don't care if they take it from my pay for 10 or 20 years. The director slowly shook his head. Dr. Sterling, we are a medical place, not a bank. We cannot give such a large sum for a personal loan to a worker. Not even for you. Our rules are strict. The most we can do is support you with the $150,000 from the insurance. For the rest, I suggest you try to use your own things you own, your car, your penthouse. The blow was stronger than Dr. Averse finding. Things you own. Things you own. Again, Kian left the director's office with shaking legs. He was officially at a stop with no friends, no co-workers, no places, no things you own. He was alone. The next days were hell. Kian was forced to ask for medical leave. The hospital bosses approved it very quickly. Too quickly. As if they were relieved to get rid of a doctor with hand problems. The rumors started spreading without control. Kian's signs got worse. That morning he woke up and the edge of his left sight was slightly blurry, as if a thin cover covered it. The disease was not waiting. He sat in the living room of his dark, fancy penthouse. The expensive curtains were closed. Mrs. Sterling was locked in her room, crying or sleeping. Kian didn't care. He looked at the phone in his hand. His contact list was so full, but he felt so empty. He began to delete names. Mrs. Jenkins, blocked, Marcus Vidal, flatterer, Sarah, gold digger. He deleted dozens of names. His phone screen now only had important names. Family from his hometown who had no money. And then his finger stopped at the N. Nia Adebayo. The name stayed there. Nia, Amara's friend. The only person who might know where Amara was. His normal ex-wife, whom he had left for not being on his level. Great shame burned Kian's face. Contacting Nia was the most low choice. It was the most complete mission of defeat. It was proof that he had completely failed. But on the other hand, Amara was the only person in this world who had given him everything without conditions. He remembered Amara's last words in the restaurant. You will regret this. The regret was here now, not as a simple feeling of guilt, but as a real, choking regret in the form of a result of blindness and being unable to move. He looked at Nia's name on the screen. His hand shook strongly from sickness and great need. He had to do it. He had no other choice. The courage Kian had boasted, the one he had used to shame Amara and as a shield of pride in the hospital, was now the size of a speck of dust. He stared at Nia's name on his mobile screen for almost an hour. His hand, now with a more severe and hard-to-control shake, rose and fell several times to press the call button. Each time he tried to press, he seemed to hear Mrs. Sterling's mean laugh and his own proud voice in his ears again. We are no longer on the same level. The shame burned his throat like stomach acid. Contacting Nia was raising the white flag. It was admitting that Amara, the normal woman he had left, was his last hope. As he waited, his left eye throbbed again. The blurry shadow at the edge seemed to grow thicker. The fear of blindness was much sharper than the shame. He inhaled sharply, leaving his pride. He pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Just when Kian thought Nia wouldn't answer, the call connected. There was no hello, just a chilling silence. Hello, Kian said, his voice. Hello, Nia. A mean sigh was heard on the other end of the line. Well, the respected Dr. Sterling, you still had my number saved. Nia's voice was so cutting and full of hate that it further broke down Kian's courage. Nia, I'm sorry to bother you so late. You're sorry. Nia laughed, a very unkind laugh. It's been over a year since you dumped my friend like trash, and now you call me to say you're sorry. Don't you think it's a little late? No, it's not that. Kian rubbed his sweaty face. I just wanted to ask how Amara was. Nia's laughter right away stopped. After a moment of silence, a very dangerous voice was heard. You asked about Amara after a year of not caring if she was dead or alive. Now you're seriously asking. Is your doctor's brain still working? Nia, please, Kian begged. His pride had completely disappeared, replaced by clear great need. I really need to talk to her. It's a matter of life or death. Life or death, Nia scoffed. Life or death. What's wrong with you? Did you run out of money? Do you want to ask her to pay for another special training for you? Or wait, I know. Oh, you're sick. Karma came for you, Kian. Nia's right guess was like a slap in the face. Khan was silent, unable to say it wasn't true. I knew it, Nia shouted. Her voice rose. You're in trouble, aren't you? I knew it. You and your mother are parasites. You thought Amara was an ATM you could go to every time you needed cash. Isn't that right, Khan? Nia, please listen to me. Kian was starting to panic. I don't want to hear anything. Nia cut him off. Listen to me well, Kian. Amara is happy. She has rebuilt her life from the base you destroyed. She has forgotten about parasites like you and your mother. Don't you dare bother her again. And don't contact me again. Blick. The call cut off. Kian stared at his mobile screen, stunned. Nia, wait. He tried to call back. Her number was right away busy. Nia had blocked him. Kian threw his phone onto the sofa again. Beaten, he walked back and forth in his dark living room, in great need. Nia was his only way, and that way had just closed. Mrs. Sterling came out of her room with a swollen face. What happened, Khan? Did you get a loan? Shut up, Mom. Kian snapped. This is all your fault too. If you hadn't pushed me, maybe Amara would have still forgiven me. Why is it my fault? You wanted it. You said you were embarrassed, Mrs. Sterling argued back. Their fight was useless. Khan returned to his phone. He couldn't call, but he could send a message. With hands shaking strongly from a combination of sickness and great need, he typed a short message. Nia, I know you hate me. I deserve it. But please, this is life or death. I need Amara's contact. I'm sick. I have nowhere else to turn. I will pay her back. Please, last chance. He stared at the screen for a long time. His hope faded. Nia really didn't care. Of course, why would she care? Kian threw his phone again. It was over. His life was over. But an hour later a message sound came. It was from Nia. Kian's heart pounded. He rushed to open it. It wasn't an address or Amara's phone number. It was just a cold reply. Do you think Amara is still the old one? The normal Amara you could step on whenever you wanted? Do you think she'll hear you're sick and cry with pity? How funny. Kian fell down. Nia was just making fun of him. But underneath that there was another message. The Amara of now is too busy running her new foundation to remember the trash of the past. If you really need help, look for it yourself. Don't be a coward. The message ended there, but Kian was stuck on one word. Foundation. What foundation? Amara had a foundation. That normal Amara. Were Nia's words a trap or just another tease? With shaking hands, he rushed to the laptop that was on the table. With his blurry left eye, he had to bring his face close to the screen. He opened a search thing. What should he type? Nima Foundation. He typed it. The first result froze him. It wasn't a social media account or a personal online journal. It was a professional website, the Nima Foundation. Kian's heart seemed to stop. He clicked the link. A very smooth and professional first page opened. On the front page was a photo of a woman. It was Amara. But it wasn't the Amara he knew. The Amara in the photo wore a well-fitting dark blue suit jacket. Her hair was cut into a neat, elegant short style. She was standing in front of a modern building, smiling slightly at the camera. Her smile was no longer the soft smile of a quiet wife. It was the smile of a leader, dignified, confident, and cold. On the lobby wall of the building behind her was a large silver sign that read, "The Nima Foundation, spreading good, building the future." Keen scrolled down with shaking hands. He read the part about the foundation started by Amara Nima, writer of the true life bestseller, The Debt of Dreams. The Nima Foundation is a not-for-profit group dedicated to helping those struggling to get ahead. Writer of a bestseller. When had Amara written a book? He continued reading. He reached the Our Main Program part. There were several. And his eyes fixed on the main program, the Scholars Beacon Grant. Full scholarships and emergency surgery money for great medical students from poor backgrounds. The laptop almost fell off his lap. Kian felt a lump in his throat. This is not possible. It's a joke. It's a bad dream. His ex-wife, Amara, whom he had insulted for not being on his level, was now the starter of a huge foundation dedicated especially to paying for the education and emergency surgeries of medical students. The twist was so painful, so cruel that Keen felt sick. He rushed to search for news about Amara. He found dozens of articles, talks in business magazines, talks on morning television shows. Amara's face was everywhere. Amara Nima turning pain into real action. With millions of dollars from book money, the Nima Foundation is ready to shape generations of new doctors. Kian looked at the laptop screen and then at the pile of debt collection letters on his desk. He held his left eye, which was starting to ache. Nia was right. The Amara of now was not the Amara of before. She was someone who was out of his league. She was the person who held the key to all his problems. And she was the person he had hurt the most in this world. The laptop screen stayed lit, showing a cold blue light into the dark penthouse living room. Amara's face, smiling with dignity from the Nima Foundation website, was a stronger slap than Dr. Avery's finding. Kian didn't sleep all night. He just sat frozen. In one hand he held the MRI results. The other shook without control. His left eye now felt very uncomfortable. His field of vision was getting smaller. The disease was not giving him time to think. The twist of the situation was too cruel, too perfect. The woman he had left for not being on his level was now the only person in this world dedicated especially to helping cases like his. In her room, Mrs. Sterling was no longer crying. She was simply silent. The shock she had had was so great that she could no longer process reality. Her social circle had stopped inviting her. Her extra credit cards had been blocked by the bank. She was now trapped just like Kian. Kian knew he had no other option. Shame, pride, arrogance. All that meant nothing if he went blind and unable to move. He had to go see Amara. He had to shed the last bit of his pride. The first problem came up: cash. He didn't have $1. All his credit cards were at the limit. He looked at his Mercedes keys on the table. Useless. The finance company had the papers. He looked at the fancy watch on his wrist. It was the only thing he owned, and he had also bought it in payments on his credit card. He took it off. "Damn it," he whispered. He put on a jacket to cover his sleep clothes and rushed out. He went to a pawn shop near the market, a place he would have once looked at with a look of not liking. Yes, Dr. Sterling had to wait in line with people pawning fake gold jewelry. The fancy watch was looked at for a very low price. He was only left with enough for a round-trip city bus ticket to the foundation's address and one meal. He chose the cheapest option, the city bus. The trip to the downtown business area, where the Nima Foundation's address was, felt like a walk to the hanging place. Used to proudly driving his Mercedes, he was now sitting in the back seat of a small car that smelled of cheap air freshener. He looked out the window at the tall buildings he once considered his play area. The car stopped in front of the lobby of a modern strong office building. The glass walls stood tall. The marble lobby shone through the elegant turning doors. A huge silver sign sparkled in the morning sun. The Nima Foundation. Kian paid the taxi with the money he had left. He stood shaking on the sidewalk. This is real. It wasn't just a website. It was a small empire. He straightened his wrinkled jacket. He felt like a beggar. With heavy steps, he pushed through the glass doors. The foundation's lobby was very different from what he had imagined. It wasn't like a small, shabby NGO office. The place looked more like a five-star hotel lobby. Busy, professional, and full of positive energy. Several young people in neat uniforms, probably scholarship receivers, walked quickly with stacks of papers. The walls were decorated with large photographs. Amara shaking hands with the president of a university. Amara opening a country clinic. Amara smiling, surrounded by admiring medical students. Khan's heart sank. All this. Amara had built all this from the pain he had caused her. He carefully went to the front desk made of expensive solid mahogany wood. A friendly young woman right away smiled at him. "Good morning, sir. How may I help you? Do you have an appointment?" A lump formed in Kian's throat. The front desk woman smiled, a professional smile that now felt like a steel shield. "I'm very sorry, sir. Without a prior appointment, I cannot interrupt her meetings. If you wish to leave a message or—" "I told you it's a life or death emergency," Kian shouted. His voice became in great need. His hands began to shake strongly, and he had to hide them in his jacket pockets. Several people in the lobby began to turn around. The front desk woman looked a little nervous. Her hand almost reached for the phone to call safety. "What is all this noise?" A calm, deep, and very familiar voice was heard from the direction of a private elevator in a corner of the lobby. Kian froze. He recognized that voice. He turned around slowly. There, standing tall in an expensive, perfectly made gray suit, was Attorney Silas Washington, Amara's lawyer. His face stayed calm, but the look behind his expensive glasses was now much sharper. He no longer seemed like a small lawyer defending an oppressed wife. He looked like a high-level company legal advisor. Attorney Washington looked at Kian. There was no surprise on his face, only cold watching. He came near. "Mr. Sterling, I didn't expect us to meet again, especially not here." Kian swallowed. His shame was now mixed with fear. "Attorney Washington, do you still remember me?" Attorney Washington smiled slightly. "Oh, I never forget a possible client who could have earned me $500,000. And I never forget someone who passed up that chance." He looked at the front desk woman. "It's all right, Mina. I'll take care of this gentleman." Attorney Washington motioned for Kian to follow him to a more private area, a waiting room with comfortable leather sofas. Kian sat on the edge of a sofa, his body stiff. Attorney Washington began, sitting comfortably across from him and crossing his legs. "What brings Mr. Sterling here after more than a year? Don't tell me you've changed your mind about the $500,000 and want to pay it back, do you?" "No," Kian cut in quickly. "It's not that. I'm sick, counselor. I'm seriously ill." "I know," Attorney Washington replied dryly. Gasped. "How do you know?" "Miss Nima's friend, Miss Nia, called her last night. After getting your text message, she told her everything about the disease where the body attacks itself and the need for $1.8 million. Miss Nima asked me to meet with you if you showed up here with force." Keen was shocked. So Nia had told. Amara knew he would come. All this was prepared. He felt like a rat in a trap. "So where is Amara?" Kian whispered. Hope was mixed with fear. "Is she going to help me?" "But yes, she still cares." Attorney Washington didn't answer, just looked at Kian with an unreadable look. Then he reached out to the coffee table between them and picked up one of the thick, shiny booklets that were neatly stacked. It was the official booklet of the NEMA Foundation. Attorney Washington said nothing, simply slid the booklet toward Kian. Kian's strongly shaking hand took the booklet and opened it. On the second page, the Foundation's vision and mission were clearly detailed. And on the third page was its main program, the Scholars Beacon Grant, complete educational money and emergency surgery cost coverage for great medical students and professionals. It was all there in black and white. Kian looked up and stared at Attorney Washington with begging eyes. "Counselor, this program means Amara is going to help me, right?" Attorney Washington leaned back in the sofa. He looked at Kian for a long time before finally speaking in a calm, chilling voice. "It is true that Ms. Nema started this group to help people, but Mr. Sterling, this program has a way of doing things." "What way?" "I'll do whatever it takes." Attorney Washington smiled slightly. "Good. Then go back to the front desk." "Why?" Kian asked, confused. "To pick up a form," Attorney Washington replied. "The asking form for medical help receivers. You will need to fill it out completely. Attach a paper of social help, receiver given by your local social services place, a statement of your debts, the official finding from Dr. Avery, and of course a letter saying you are good. Then our team will look at whether you meet the needs." Kian froze. Paper of social help receiver. Dr. Kian having to go to a city office to ask for a paper of being poor. "Mr. Sterling," Attorney Washington continued, "you are not here as an ex-husband looking for care. You are here, Mr. Sterling, as an asker, a person asking like dozens of other askers. Now go and pick up the form." Kian stumbled out of the NEMA Foundation's grand lobby. His body felt light and heavy at the same time, as if his soul had escaped. In his hand, he held a booklet and a few sheets of an asking form that felt heavier than Dr. Avery's result. Asking form for medical help receiver. Paper of social help receiver given by the local social services place. Those words danced before his more and more blurry eyes. Yes, Dr. Kian, whose photo had appeared in the hospital's internal health magazine, now had to beg for a paper of being poor at a city office. It was a level of shame he had never imagined. Attorney Washington didn't even walk him to the door. He let him leave alone, passing between the curious looks of the young workers who had seen him enter with a lawyer and now saw him leave with a pale face. He arrived at his penthouse, which now felt like a fancy prison. Mrs. Sterling right away greeted him at the door. "What happened, Ken? Did you see Amara? Did she say she would help you? She still loves you, Mom. Are you sure?" Kian didn't answer. He walked directly to the dining room table and threw the asking form onto the marble table. "Read it," he whispered. Mrs. Sterling picked up the papers. Her eyes widened as she read the title of the form. "What is this? Why do you have to fill out a form? She's your ex-wife." Then her eyes fell on the list of needs. Attached paper of social help receiver given by the local social services place. Mrs. Sterling's voice sharpened. "Amara is crazy. She wants to shame us. She wants to make us beg." "She did." "Mom," Con yelled. His voice cracked. He punched the wall next to him, but his fist shook so much that it felt weak. "She managed to turn me into a beggar. Do you think I have another choice? Do you want me to go blind? Do you want to push my wheelchair in this penthouse that the bank will take back next month?" Mrs. Sterling was silent. Her face was pale. Reality hit her without mercy. "Grab your bag, Mom," Kian ordered coldly. "We're going to the social services office right now." "But Con, I'm embarrassed," Mrs. Sterling cried. "What are you more embarrassed of? Going to the social services office or having the debt collectors come and throw you out of this penthouse in front of all your social circle friends?" Mrs. Sterling couldn't argue. With a shaking body, she got dressed. She on purpose put on large sunglasses and a face mask, hoping no one would recognize her. The trip to the social services office was the most shameful of their lives. They couldn't drive their Mercedes, whose taxes were late. They had to take a city bus that dropped them right at the peeling door of the city office. As soon as they entered, all eyes were on them. Workers busily typing, other citizens waiting in line for help. They were a sharply different sight. Mrs. Sterling with her hidden fake handbag, and Kian, the young doctor with a familiar face, now sitting in a cracked orange plastic waiting chair. "Hey, isn't that Dr. Sterling from the Heights?" whispered one worker to his coworker. "Yeah, what's he doing here?" "This is the social help window." Ken simply lowered his head, tightening his shaking hands on his knees. Mrs. Sterling pretended to be busy with her phone, although the screen was off. When their turn came, Kian went to the window with heavy steps. "Good morning, sir. How may I help you?" "I want to ask for a paper of social help receiver," Kian said in an almost inaudible voice. The worker looked up in surprise. "Excuse me, sir. For whom?" "For me, Kian Sterling." The worker looked him up and down. "You're Dr. Sterling. The one from the Heights, right?" "Excuse me, but you don't look like it." "I'm sick," Kian shouted. His voice rose. "I'm seriously ill. I need a $1.8 million surgery. I don't work anymore. I'm ruined. Have no money. Just give me the form." The whole office fell silent. All eyes were on Kian. Mrs. Sterling wanted to faint right there. This shame was worse than death. After a process that felt like forever, filled with looks of doubt and sharp whispers, that precious piece of paper finally was in Kian's hands. Paper of social help receiver. The city office stamp felt like a red-hot mark burning his palm. That night, Kian couldn't sleep. He sat at his desk under a dim reading light, filling out page by page the NEMA Foundation asking form. Ask person name, Kian Sterling, job, not working surgeon. He reached the debt status part. He wrote everything one by one, swallowing his pride with every move of the pen. The Sterling Heights penthouse. Loan, $1 million. Mercedes C-Class vehicle loan $225,000. Bank a credit card $25,000. Bank B. Credit card $25,000. Bank C personal loan $15,000. The total reached $1.3 million. In the things you own part he wrote one word, none. He attached the paper of social help receiver, copies of all his debt collection letters and Dr. Avery's finding. It was a perfect file of his being broke and his failure. The next morning he returned to the foundation building. This time his look was even more messy. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were red. He handed the thick file to the front desk woman Mina, who got it with the same professional smile. "Yes, sir. I've gotten the file. Our look-at team will process it. Please wait." Kian waited in the lobby. 1 hour 2-3. He saw people passing by. He saw cheerful medical students, probably paid for by Amara. Just when he thought they would tell him to leave, Attorney Washington appeared from the elevator. "Mr. Sterling, Ms. Nema will see you now." Ken's heart seemed to stop. It was time. He followed Attorney Washington like a lamb to the kill. They went up in the private elevator to the penthouse floor, the highest one. The elevator doors opened directly to a very large office. The walls were glass, giving a 180 degrees view of the city. In the center of the room, behind a huge, neat mahogany desk, Amara was sitting. Kian held his breath. The Amara he saw now was not the one in the photos. She was much more strong. Her hair was pulled back in a neat, modern bun. She wore an elegant emerald silk blouse. Her face was subtly but firmly made up. She was reading something on her computer screen. She didn't look up right away when Kian and Attorney Washington entered. "Miss Nema, Mr. Sterling is here," Attorney Washington said softly. Amara finished reading, then slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were what had changed the most. Before they were full of love and great liking. Now they were cold, calm, and sharp like those of a bird of prey. There was no love or hate, only thinking. "Mr. Sterling, please sit down," Amara said. Her voice was flat. Not Kian but Mr. Sterling. Kian sat in a stiff chair across from Amara's desk. He felt like an accused man. Attorney Washington stood silently in a corner of the room. "We have looked at your asking," Amara began. Her voice was as calm as if she were talking about the weather. She picked up the MRI he had given. The finding of a strong and getting worse disease where the body attacks itself from Dr. Avery. Need for money of $1.80, 8 million. We have checked it with the Singapore hospital. The amount is right. Amra turned to the next page. And your debt status? A total of $1.3 million. Very impressive. You managed to waste so much money in just 1 year. Kian turned red with shame. Amara. Kian couldn't bear it anymore. He had to beg. Amara, I was wrong. I was blind. Amara, I was proud. Amara slightly raised her hand, palm toward Khan, a small move with great power that right away silenced Kian. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice still flat. I am not interested in your sorries. That is your personal matter and has no worth in this business idea. Business? Keen opened his mouth. Of course, this foundation is a legal thing. $1.8 million is a very large investment to save a life. My team must look at whether the thing to be saved is worth that cost. Kian felt stabbed. She thinks of me as a thing. Of course, you are a trained surgeon. You have a skill. It would be a shame for you to go blind or unable to move. Amara looked at him steadily. But you have a very poor past record in handling investments given by others. That sentence hit Kian right in the heart. Amara was talking about the cost of his 5 years of school. Kian lowered his head. He was completely beaten. Then Amara, what is your choice? Are you going to say no to me? Amara leaned back in her chair. She looked at Kian for a long time. The silence in the room was very heavy. No, your asking has been said yes to. Kian let out a gasp. Tears of relief almost flowed. Amara, thank you. Thank you. I promise I'm not finished yet. Amara cut him off. Her voice was still icy. The foundation will cover the whole of the $1.8 million for your surgery in Singapore. Oh God. Thank you, Amara. Thank you. And Amara continued as if Ken hadn't spoken. The foundation will also take over all your spending debt, the $1.3 million. Kian was speechless. What? Amara, you're going to pay my car payments, my penthouse loan. Right. I do not want your things you own to be bothered by collectors while you get better. Kian couldn't believe it. This was more than he expected. Amara, I don't know what to say. Say nothing because this is not a gift, Amara said. It is not charity or care. Amara stood up and walked to the large window looking at the city below. It is a grant, a work agreement. Kian tensed up. Work agreement. Amara turned around, her eyes fixed on Kian's. There was no sign of love in them, only pure business. The Nima Foundation will invest a total of $3.1 million in you. After you fully get better, and you will get better, you will no longer be the proud, free Dr. Sterling. You will be a thing owned by the Nima Foundation. Kian looked at Amara in disbelief. A thing owned by the foundation. Exactly. Amara sat back down in her chair as if closing a normal business deal. She gestured to Attorney Washington. Attorney Washington stepped forward and placed a thick black leather folder on the desk in front of Kian. Read it, Mr. Sterling, Attorney Washington said. That is your work agreement. Kian's shaking hand opened the folder. Inside were not one but dozens of sheets of thick legal agreements, including a debt-giving agreement and a dedication agreement. Amara began to explain. Her voice was flat and without feeling, as if reading a money report. First, the foundation will pay the whole of your $3.1 million in debt within 24 hours. $1.8 million for your surgery and $1.3 million to pay off the loan, car loan, and all your credit cards. Kian swallowed. Second, all things you own related to those debts. The Sterling Heights penthouse and the Mercedes C-Class vehicle will be taken by the foundation as something to keep for safety. Attorney Washington's team will handle the making you leave tomorrow morning. You and your mother have until tonight to pack your bags. Kian gasped. Making you leave. But where will I live? Third, the foundation will give you basic place to stay for the time of the agreement, a room in our clinic staff living place. Fourth, this agreement is strong. You will give your medical career under the OPACs of the NEMA Foundation, taking into account that the foundation's total investment in you is $3.1 million and the normal pay for a doctor in our clinic is $4,500 per month. Amara picked up a calculator from her desk and typed in silence. You will be under an only dedication agreement with us for 28 years. 28 years. Kian lost all strength. It was a life sentence. However, Amara continued as if reading his mind, if you do very well, our foundation has an early let-go program for things of excellence. If you can show special dedication and service in a faraway area, your agreement could be looked at again. Faraway area, Kian whispered. Surely you didn't think I would send you to a fancy hospital in Atlanta, did you, Mr. Sterling? Amara smiled slightly. It was the first smile Kian saw, and it was the most terrifying. You will be sent to our service clinic in a small town in the Mississippi Delta, an 8-hour drive from the city. Kian bowed his head. He had no other choice. Sign a 28-year agreement in a faraway town or go blind, unable to move, and chased by collectors in jail. I'll sign, Kian whispered. A wise choice, Amara said. She held out an expensive pen to him. Kian took the pen. His hand shook strongly, half from the sickness, half because his fate had just been sealed. He signed every page Attorney Washington pointed to. Good, Amara said. As soon as the last signature was done, Attorney Washington will take you to the bank to open a new account in the foundation's name and will get your leaving for Singapore the day after tomorrow. Work hard, Dr. Sterling. Amara returned to looking at her computer screen, completely ignoring Khan as if the meeting were over and Khan was no longer in the room. 2 days later, Attorney Washington's team arrived at the Sterling Heights penthouse. Mrs. Sterling, who thought Amara would change her mind and let them stay, cried in a crazy way. Amara, you're evil. How can you do this? This is our home. Where are we going to live? Attorney Washington simply showed a valid taking order. I'm sorry, ma'am. This loan has been paid by the foundation. According to the agreement, this thing you own becomes the property of the foundation. You have 1 hour to get your personal things. The proud Mrs. Sterling had to force her clothes into a suitcase while listening to the gossip of the penthouse neighbors. Kian's Mercedes was pulled from the underground garage. Mrs. Sterling was taken by taxi to a small, choking rental apartment on the edge of the city, whose first 3 months of rent were paid by the foundation. After that, she would have to take care of herself. Meanwhile, Kian had the operation in Singapore. Everything went well. Stem cell technology managed to reset his defense system. His getting better process was long and alone. There was no Mrs. Sterling to care for him, no co-workers to visit him, only a nurse hired by the foundation. 2 months later, Kian returned to the U.S. He was fully better. His hands no longer shook. His vision was clear again, but he was no longer a free man. He was picked up at the airport by a foundation worker. He was handed a plain uniform shirt with a NEMA Foundation logo and was right away taken to the bus station. An 8-hour trip on a hot normal bus and then a 2-hour motorcycle taxi ride down a dirt road. He finally arrived at the service clinic, a plain white building in the middle of a town surrounded by cotton fields. There was no air conditioning, only fans. There was no high-tech equipment, only a stethoscope, a blood pressure machine, and basic medicines. The former surgery star, Kian, now had to treat coughs, colds, diarrhea, and help with births using basic equipment. At first, he felt very angry, full of bad feeling and shamed. But he had no other option. Every day, he worked under the strict watch of the clinic director. Back in Atlanta, Mrs. Sterling suffered. The money for the 3 months ran out. She was forced to sell her handbags. Yes, the same woman who had once shamed Amara now had to work as a helper in a restaurant, washing dishes, struggling to live. Every time she saw Amara's face on the television news as an important person who gives to charity, Mrs. Sterling could only cry in her small rental apartment with no end regret. 6 months passed and Kian began to get used to it. He started finding something that had been missing in his life, realness. He saw the patients in the town who were simply thankful for a checkup. He helped a child with a broken arm using basic tools. He realized that the meaning of being a doctor was not fancy things or status. One afternoon, a helicopter landed in the town field, surprising all the people living there. Can, who was treating a farmer's wound, looked up. Amara stepped out of the helicopter, followed by Attorney Washington. She had come for a normal check. Amara, dressed in a neat linen shirt, entered the clinic. She saw Khan, who was now slightly tanned by the sun. His uniform shirt was wet with sweat. Amara did not greet him personally. She checked the medicine list books and patient records. She stopped in front of Kian, who was comforting a child crying over a shot. Kian's hand, which once shook from sickness and pride, was now very firm and gentle as he patted the child's back. Their eyes met for a moment. Kian inclined his head in greeting. "Good morning, Miss Nima. The daily patient report is on the clinic director's desk." Amara looked at him for a long time. There was no longer anger in her eyes, only the look of a leader toward her worker. "Good work, Dr. Sterling. Keep it up. You have 27.5 years left." Amara turned around and returned to her helicopter. Kian watched as the helicopter flew away. He sighed deeply. He really wasn't on Amara's level. Amara was in the sky and he was on the ground. Amara had won perfectly. She had not only gotten back her money, she had not only gotten revenge. She had taken Can's life, destroyed it, and then rebuilt it into her own version. Not as a proud husband but as a dedicated doctor. Amara had managed to spread good in the most painful and fair way possible. A short lesson. Pride is debt with the highest cost. It will be collected when we are least ready. Realness, on the other hand, is an investment. It will often be returned twofold in the most unexpected ways. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories that I highly say are good. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.